Have you ever felt your libido decrease? And you didn't understand why? The answer may lie in what happens every night, or what doesn't. If you're over 60 and you're tired of feeling lacking energy, lacking desire, and disconnected from your body, this video is for you. Discover the 3 practical and scientifically proven steps that reactivate your vitality, even after years of insomnia, tiredness, and apathy. You don't need expensive pills. You need to sleep the right way. Watch until the end and learn how your body can transform in a few nights. Because desire does not disappear with time. He just waits for the right moment to wake up. Subscribe to the channel for more videos on health, sexuality, and vitality and maturity. When it comes to libido after 60, many people think that time is the main culprit for the desire that decreases. But science shows that there is a silent, often ignored enemy that is sabotaging not only sex life, but also the functioning of the entire body: poor quality sleep. Poor sleep is not just a matter of tiredness. It is a process that completely dysregulates hormonal systems, reduces the production of testosterone and estrogen, directly affects desire, energy, and even the emotional disposition for touch and intimacy. And the most surprising? This starts to happen with just 1 or 2 bad nights. For those over 60, this impact is even more direct because the body is naturally already in a slower hormonal rhythm, and any instability in sleep aggravates the drop in libido. During deep sleep, the brain performs a kind of hormonal cleaning. It activates regions that regulate the release of sex hormones, as well as promote cell regeneration, balance cortisol, the stress hormone, and ensure that the glands responsible for libido are functioning properly. When sleep is disrupted, fragmented, or insufficient, this cycle is broken. The result is not just waking up tired. It is feeling disconnected from one's own body. Men report difficulty in erection as soon as they wake up. Women notice vaginal dryness in the early hours of the day. Intimacy is avoided not because of lack of will, but because of lack of body signal. In addition, poor sleep activates brain areas associated with anxiety, which drastically reduces the production of dopamine, a neurotransmitter linked to motivation, pleasure, and arousal. In a study published by Stanford University, men who slept less than 5 hours a night for a week showed up to a 31% drop in morning testosterone levels. This is equivalent to biologically aging by about 10 years, just by sleep deprivation. And in women, the picture is even more delicate. Poor sleep triggers the unregulated production of prolactin, a hormone that, when elevated outside the natural cycle, reduces sexual interest and affects the menstrual cycle, even after menopause. But if sleep plays such an important role in libido, why is it so ignored in treatments aimed at sexual health in old age? The answer lies in the way traditional medicine separates symptoms. An elderly person who feels tired, discouraged, and lacking desire usually receives diagnoses such as chronic fatigue or mild depression. Rarely does anyone investigate how this body is sleeping, or if it is sleeping at all. In more up-to-date longevity clinics, it is already known that the first question when treating sexual dysfunctions is not about the frequency of the act or the length of intercourse. It is about the quality of sleep in the last week. Because there is no pleasure if there is no rest, there is no desire if the body has no chance to regenerate, and most importantly, it doesn't require expensive drugs or invasive solutions. There are 3 simple, science-based steps that reactivate libido naturally from the first night of well-regulated sleep. The first step begins even before going to bed. This is the so-called neurohormonal preparation. It is the process of helping the brain understand that it is entering a resting phase. For this, it is not enough to just turn off the lights. The body needs clear signals, and these signals are sent through small habits: avoiding bright screens for at least 60 minutes before bed, reducing the volume of voices and sounds in the environment, and above all, reducing decision stimuli. In other words, no discussions, news, or social networks before bed. A brain that goes into bed in alert mode does not activate the nighttime production of melatonin, which is the key hormone for inducing deep, restorative sleep. And the detail that many people don't know: the production of melatonin is directly linked to the production of dopamine and testosterone the next day. If the night is poorly slept, the libido cycle is already compromised in the morning. And this repeats itself like a vicious cycle. Bad nights generate tiredness, which reduces interest, which generates frustration, which worsens sleep, and so on. Therefore, the second step is what experts call the physiological anchor. It is the habit that teaches the body to recognize that it is safe to turn off. In the case of the elderly, the most effective anchor is the use of amber or red lights in the environment 1 hour before sleep. These colors do not interfere with hormone production and help the brain get out of alertness. Simply change the lamp bulb or use a screen filter in these shades. Small gesture, big effect. But it is in the third step that the turning point happens, and it is not done in the bedroom nor in bed. It starts right when you wake up. It is the so-called morning light trigger. Exposure to direct sunlight, for at least 15 minutes upon awakening, regulates the entire hormonal axis and activates the production of serotonin, which, at night, converts into melatonin. In other words, sleeping well depends on how you wake up, and waking up well depends on how the body is inserted in the natural light cycle. For those over 60, this is even more important, because the circadian rhythm, the biological clock that regulates sleep and libido, gets more sensitive over time, and it needs real light in the morning to work as it should. These 3 steps, nocturnal preparation without stimuli, amber light before bed, and direct sunlight in the morning, form the simplest, most accessible, and most effective protocol for regaining sleep and reactivating libido naturally. It's not magic, it's biology, and the body responds to this with gratitude. In a few days, there's an increase in energy, an improvement in sexual disposition, a feeling of presence and touch, and above all, reconnection with one's own pleasure. While many men and women over the age of 60 seek solutions and medications, supplements, or expensive treatments to regain libido, what is lacking in most cases is a regulated physiological basis. The body does not respond to stimuli if it is exhausted. And burnout doesn't just manifest itself as tiredness. It appears as disinterest, lack of sensitivity, reduced self-confidence, and difficulty connecting with one's own pleasure. Sleep, in this context, is the foundation of vitality. Without it, desire simply does not find room to flourish. To understand this in a practical way, just observe how the body responds when it sleeps well for 2 or 3 nights in a row. Men report spontaneous erections upon waking up, something they haven't experienced in weeks. Women notice the return of natural lubrication and the desire for physical contact. This is no coincidence. It is physiology in action. Deep sleep activates areas of the hypothalamus and limbic system that are directly linked to the perception of pleasure and sexual disposition. In addition, the regulation of glucose and insulin during sleep also plays a central role. When there is metabolic imbalance, the body goes into defense mode, prioritizing survival over pleasure. That's why people with prediabetes or insulin resistance, something very common after 50, often report loss of desire. A study from the University of Chicago revealed that men who regulated their sleep for just 1 week, maintaining 7 to 8 continuous hours per night, showed a significant increase in testosterone production, improved erection quality, and greater satisfaction with sexual performance. And not only that, an improvement in self-esteem, a sense of energy during the day, and interest in social activities was also observed. In other words, sleep is a natural antidepressant, a hormone restorative, and a desire activator, all at the same time. In women, the effects are even more interesting. During deep sleep, there's a release of hormones that not only influence desire, but also the emotional response to touch and affection. Oxytocin, known as the affect hormone, is regulated at night. When sleep is restorative, women wake up more emotionally connected, more willing to intimate interactions, and less sensitive to stress. This explains why couples who sleep poorly tend to report more fights, more distancing, and less sexual interest. The problem is not only in the relationship, it's in biology. Another important point is body temperature. For deep sleep to happen, the body needs to reduce its core temperature. This means that the room environment should be slightly cool. Between 17 and 19 degrees Celsius is ideal. Higher temperatures make it difficult to start deep sleep and, consequently, impair the entire hormonal cascade at dawn. A ventilated room with light bedding and adequate sleeping clothes makes all the difference. Small environmental details like these directly impact sexual health, but the most impressive thing is in neuroplasticity. The brain is able to relearn how to sleep well, even after decades of mild or moderate insomnia, and when it recovers this pattern, it resumes the regular production of neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, all of which are directly linked to pleasure, motivation, and mood. This means that a person who has not felt desire for years can feel it again, as long as the body has the biochemical conditions to do so. Libido does not fade over time. She only falls asleep when her body is not heard. It is at this point that longevity experts work with a concept called circadian sexual restoration. It's about aligning the body's rhythm with the natural cycles of light, sleep, and food. By doing this, libido becomes an active part of life again, and not a symptom forgotten in the exam drawer. And it all starts at night. More than a sleep routine, it is a routine of preparation to live well, with desire, with energy, and with fullness. The 3 steps mentioned above, preparation without stimuli, amber light before bed, and sunlight when waking up, are the basis. But there are ways to enhance them for those who have been unable to sleep well or without feeling desire for a long time. The use of binaural sounds with relaxing frequencies, for example, activates brain areas associated with deep rest. Guided meditation apps for sleep have also shown great results. What's more, The practice of deep breathing before bedtime helps activate the vagus nerve, which is responsible for slowing the heart rate and inducing complete relaxation. A simple exercise. Lying down. Inhale deeply through your nose in 4 seconds. Hold the air for 4 seconds. Exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 seconds, and repeat this cycle for 5 minutes. This induces the so-called state of cardiac coherence, reduces cortisol, and prepares the body to shut down. This type of preparation is more effective than any sleeping pill because it teaches the body to sleep on its own. Sleeping well is, therefore, the first gesture of reconnection with one's own pleasure. It is the signal we give to our body that we are alive, attentive, and deserving of feeling. Because libido is not just sexual desire, it is the will to live. And this desire is born in the silence of the night, when the body, finally, allows itself to rest. Although the impact of sleep on libido is undeniable, it is still common to find resistance among elderly men and women to accept that their desire is directly linked to the way they sleep. Many still believe that the loss of libido is simply a consequence of age, something natural and irreversible. This belief, however, is not supported by current science. Research over the past 2 decades has shown that the brain and body remain responsive to sexual stimuli well into old age, as long as they are functioning at healthy rates. And sleep, more than any other factor, is the invisible conductor of this physiological orchestra. When the body sleeps soundly, the pineal gland releases melatonin in adequate amounts, which in turn influences the activity of the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, the hormonal circuitry that regulates the production of estrogen, testosterone, and other sex hormones. If this cycle is interrupted, the body goes into economy mode, reduces interest in activities that are not vital to immediate survival, such as sexuality, and starts to prioritize only basic functions. This explains why many older people report not only a drop in desire, but also a kind of emotional apathy, as if they are disconnected from themselves. Another relevant point is the role of emotional memory. Quality sleep helps consolidate positive, effective, and emotional memories. Couples who sleep well are more likely to maintain healthy bonds because their brain processes nighttime emotions with balance. When there is sleep deprivation, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for emotional control, malfunctions. Small arguments become big conflicts and intimacy is replaced by distancing. In other words, sleeping well is also a way to keep the relationship alive. In addition to hormonal and emotional factors, there's a purely physiological issue that cannot be ignored: blood circulation. Deep sleep is responsible for restoring vascular tone, improving peripheral blood flow, and activating tissue regeneration. For sexual response, in both men and women, adequate blood flow is essential. Erections, lubrication, sensitivity to touch. It all depends on a good irrigation of the genitals, and this only fully happens when the cardiovascular system is in balance, something that, again, depends on restful nighttime sleep. But if sleep is so decisive, why do so many people sleep poorly? One of the answers lies in the excess of artificial stimuli that have invaded the nights in recent decades. Televisions in the bedroom, cell phones in bed, social networks before bed, excessive white lights. All this disorients the brain, which begins to understand the night as an extension of the day. This confuses the circadian rhythm and reduces melatonin production, even if the body is exhausted. It is the famous light sleep. The person thinks he has slept but wakes up tired, irritable, and without vitality. In old age, this is even more serious because the natural production of melatonin is already reduced over time. The body needs help to get into night mode, and that help comes from routine. Light and early dinners, dark environments after 19 o'clock, quiet reading instead of screens, warm baths before bedtime. Every little habit teaches the body to slow down. And a slowed body sleeps. It is a body that sleeps, desires. Another factor that contributes to poor sleep, and consequently to a drop in libido, is the use of medications without proper guidance. Many medications for blood pressure, anxiety, and even muscle pain have the side effect of interfering with deep sleep, and even so, they are consumed at night, without adjusting the schedule or replacing them with alternatives with less impact. The result is a vicious cycle. The medicine interferes with sleep. Poor sleep worsens symptoms. The doctor increases the dose, and the patient sinks further into a state of apathy and discouragement. For this reason, doctors specializing in longevity health today work with the concept of sleep hygiene, which goes far beyond sleeping 8 hours a night. It is a broad approach which considers food, light, sounds, temperature, emotions, and even the content consumed before bed. Everything counts. Because the brain doesn't turn off with a button. It needs to be guided carefully and consistently to the stage of deep rest. And this rest is the portal of hormonal, emotional, and sexual restoration. Many seniors report that when they regained deep sleep, they felt not only more desirous, but more alive. They began to look at the mirror with more affection, at their partner with more curiosity, at their own body with more gratitude. The libido, in this case, did not come back as a sudden flame, but as a constant breeze, a silent return of the will to feel, to touch, and to be touched. And all this because the body finally rested. The restoration of libido after the age of 60 begins silently when the body stops fighting to survive and breathes freely again. Deep, consistent, and respected sleep is the natural trigger of this transformation. It does not require expensive medications nor invasive interventions. Only awareness, consistency, and small nocturnal choices that, day after day, give the body back the right to feel. That's why experts in sexuality and aging say there is no intimacy possible without rest. And true rest only happens when the body understands that it is safe, welcomed, and in harmony with the environment. This is true for both those who live alone and couples. Many men and women who believed that the desire was over were actually just sleeping, emotionally exhausted, and with a dysregulated hormonal system. By correcting this, intimate life doesn't just return, it reinvents itself. The third step, mentioned at the beginning, is the most important of all, creating a nightly slowing ritual. And this is not just a routine, but a pact with one's own body. Close the curtains, dim the lights, turn off the devices, prepare a warm infusion, listen to soft sounds, or even write down some thoughts in a notebook. These actions signal to the brain that it is time for recollection, that the day is over, that it's safe to stop. And when the brain understands this, it activates physical, emotional, and sexual regeneration processes that cannot be replaced by any supplement. In fact, many elderly people report that, after adopting these simple practices, they began to feel the effects of other care more intensely. Natural supplements started to work better. Exercises gave more results. Even the mood improved. All because the body was finally allowed to go into full recovery mode. And it is in this way that desire awakens, silently, naturally, as a biological response to a well-cared-for body. For couples, a precious tip is to share this ritual. Turn off the appliances together, listen to quiet music together, talk softly before bed. The touch that begins with a light shoulder or hand massage can awaken emotional memories that have been dormant. Libido, in these moments, does not come from performance, but from presence, from the feeling that the other is there, whole, available, unhurried. And this only happens when there is no exhaustion, when there is no distraction, when restful sleep has been respected in the previous nights. Another practical tip involves breathing before bed. Studies show that the practice of alternate breathing, inhaling through one nostril and exhaling through the other, helps balance the cerebral hemispheres and induces a state of deep tranquility. This reduces blood pressure, relaxes the muscles, and favors the onset of sleep. With this type of practice, the body learns to go to rest naturally, and a body that rests won't. It is also important to remember that self-esteem directly influences desire, and self-esteem is born, in large part, from the perception we have of our body and our internal state. Poor sleep affects the skin, posture, disposition, and even mental clarity. Sleeping well improves appearance, activates the muscles more efficiently, and brings a sense of control over one's own life. Feeling good about yourself is the first step to wanting to relate to the other. The libido, therefore, is not lost. It is just waiting for ideal conditions to return. And these conditions are not in the future, nor in the laboratories. They are in the way each night is lived, in the way you take care of your own sleep, respecting one's own limits, and in the courage to start over even when the desire seems distant. Because there is no age to feel, there is only the moment when the body is finally heard. And that moment can start today, with a simple choice: sleep well.